morning. Welcome to Senate Commerce Committee. We have a busy agenda today, so we're going to get started. We're going to start with an informational briefing on the $100 million in federal funding for modernization, infrastructure development, and business retention. And I believe Rachel Willis with the Department of Commerce is with us. Welcome, Rachel.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rachel Willis, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. Thank you for the invitation to share the latest regarding the allocation of $100 million of ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act funding, to the Department of Commerce. This funding allocation is to support the creation and administration of a grant to support infrastructure development to address economic development opportunities statewide with the goal of expanding the state's base of businesses and residents. So since receiving this allocation, Commerce has developed a request for application, so an RFA, for a program what we call BASE, Building a Stronger Economy. It was reviewed and approved by the Office of Recovery. The RFA was released to the public on Monday, January 31st, and applications are currently being accepted. They will be accepted throughout the month with the deadline of being February 28th. A grant application webinar was hosted on February 2nd. The recording of this webinar and PowerPoint presentation is available on our website. Award notifications will be made March 25th of 2022. BASE will provide matching funds, so there is a minimum of a 25% match requirement to address economic development opportunities throughout the state. The BASE program includes infrastructure investments associated with economic development projects, including the development of new business parks, the development of infrastructure required to support business expansions, the development of infrastructure such as railroad spurs, water, wastewater, stormwater, and other utilities, driveway aprons, business park signage, parking facilities directly associated with business attraction projects, speculative industrial office and residential space, development of infrastructure related to cybersecurity investments, and other projects that achieve the goal of expanding the state's base of businesses and residents. These grants will support economic development projects in rural, urban, and suburban, so all parts of the state. Projects submitted must show an opportunity for success and complete risk assessment questions. Additionally, applications are required to document how this project was delayed or negatively affected by COVID. Awardees will be provided with 50% of award funding in 2022. The remaining 50% of funding will be provided no earlier than January of 2023, provided that there are 2 consecutive and satisfactory quarterly progress reports submitted and approved. And lastly, according to the American Rescue Plan Act final rule, all funds must be allocated by December 31st of 2024 and expended by December 31st of 2026. I will stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that overview. Questions for Rachel on this program? I guess you covered it all, Rachel. The one thing I would say is as the applications are submitted and you start going through this process, I would appreciate, you letting us know, how many applicants and how they were awarded and used. I think that would be good for us to see how successful this program is.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Senator Stephan.
Thank you. Help me understand the blurb you had about how it was affected by COVID. Can you flesh that out a little bit, please?
Yeah, so this is just specifically tied to the ARPA funding, so this is a federal regulation that we're following.
Senator Stephan.
Thank you. Okay. Again, within the program, give me some examples of what will constitute.
Sure. So they would have to demonstrate things like COVID-related revenue loss, financing issues, supply chain issues, labor shortages, that sort of thing.
Anything else, Senator Stephan?
Sure. Thank you. Labor shortages, via COVID. Can you flesh that out a little bit for me? 'Cause I think you just opened up every business in every sector in the state.
Yeah, so as long as they can demonstrate that within their application.
Demonstrate what?
A labor shortage related to experiencing COVID.
Can you define that for me, please?
I cannot.
Okay, we're going to move on to, I think we got the cobwebs out now, and we're having some questions generated, so we'll move to Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions might be simple, but I'm just trying to understand, when I heard the Spark funding, I think about the Spark small business that happened, I don't know, it was like 2 years ago now. It's all blurring together. But so I guess what I'm trying to understand is this is ARPA money from the federal government that's been asked to be spent on this, and so then it's gone to Spark, and then it's gone to the Department of Commerce.
Yes, yep, and the State Finance Council also approved in that process.
I see that. And so then when I'm reading and when I was hearing you talk about the specifics, those were specifics through the federal, that's what they asked for you to do, or that's what's been decided here?
Yeah, so there are federal regulations, since it's ARPA related, that we have to meet. And then based on conversations and town halls that the Spark Committee has heard, they came up with some of these eligibility and kind of the overview or the thought process behind allocating this for economic development opportunities in the state.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions for Rachel? Thank you, Rachel, and we'll look forward to those updates as they become available.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Okay, committee, next we have Andy Schlapp from Wichita State University, who's going to give us some information on NIAR Works MRO Hanger Project. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Andy Schlapp, Executive Director of Government Relations and Strategy at Wichita State University. Before I start, I want to talk about two things. One is I'm here today to talk about an infrastructure request that we have in the budget, and you'll be looking at that budget later. But I wanted to give a history of Kansas just for a second. If we go back to where Kansas really started to grow, two things happened. We had an abundance of farmland and an investment in infrastructure in the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad that allowed people to come to Kansas and move products out of Kansas. And at that time, almost 3%, so between 1890 and 1910, almost 3% of the U.S. population lived in Kansas. And since 1910, most counties experienced their highest real population ever in Kansas, right? So that was 112 years ago. And every year since 1910, we have been losing population to the rest of the country. It doesn't mean we're not growing. It just means we had about 3% of the U.S. population in 1910. Today it's 0.82%, and it's going down faster than it's ever gone down before. So why I'm here today is to talk about, A, that investment in that infrastructure made a difference to Kansas, and what are those infrastructure investments we can make going forward. Talking about Wichita State for a second, we know the only way we're going to be successful is to produce graduates that can meet business and workforce needs. And the only way we do that is to increase the population. Just talked about the problems we have with population in the state, which means we got to figure out how to get more jobs in the state, which means we have to focus on bringing companies or growing companies that we have or bringing new companies in. We're committed to doing that. Some of you have been out to our innovation campus and seen the companies that we brought in. We're continuing to do this. This is another model where we're going to partner with private sector to bring in, hopefully at the end of this, about 1,500 jobs. So if I have this presentation, I'll try not to read it, but as we were talking about infrastructure and the importance of infrastructure, here's the good, bad thing. In 2012, Boeing left the state, right? And the good news was Spirit stayed. And Spirit then was able to diversify their workforce, and now they do work with the DoD, they do work with Airbus, and they're not just a supplier for Boeing. So they can make sure they're their growth cycles are not committed just to one product, right? And part of the problem that we had this last 2 years with the 737 MAX, that's still about 70% of what they do. So they're continuing to work on diversifying. But the infrastructure that Boeing left allowed a private investor to purchase all of that infrastructure, right? And then in 2018, we had a company that was looking to move its engineering group to another part of the state. We did not want to lose our engineering talent in Kansas. So in Wichita, I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, we have the third most per capita engineers of any city in the country. So number one is San Jose, right? And that's all software engineers. Number two is Houston, petroleum and chemical engineers. Number three is Wichita. Number four is Dayton, Ohio, in case you're curious. So there's a lot of cities that have a high concentration of engineers in aviation. So we're trying to keep that talent here. So in 2018, we brought those engineers in and started working on where can we make a difference in the aviation industry? How can we bring people in to this and keep business here and bring more companies in? So they started working on doing test flights and environmental testing labs. So lightning strikes, corrosions, things like that. So you can see in 1 year, they were able to grow their workforce to 100. And in 2020, they grew to 200. So finding work, keeping work in Kansas. In 2021, and again, this is all kind of related to COVID, but what happened, not to get too boring, and you guys might be bored already, I'm starting to, I'll try to make it exciting, but because we weren't flying overseas and because of the technological changes that were happening, it's actually more affordable for these aircraft companies, Delta, United, to fly smaller aircraft overseas. You don't have to fill as large a plane. They're very fuel efficient. The problem is you've got these 787s, you've got 777s. So all the 777s are coming out of commercial flight. And the 737 and the A320 for Airbus are going to be the workhorse for all flights, domestic and international. So right now, Boeing has 200 777s parked in the desert that are pretty new aircraft that still have rental payments that are due. Part two of what happened during this whole pandemic was that people stayed home and started buying things at home. So now we need to move a lot more freight than we did. So what is happening is they want to take these 777s and these wide-body aircraft that are no longer going to be used for commercial, and they want to turn those into freighters. So how we can move more products. So that's really what we're focused on. And so we have a partnership with a private company. We developed all the intellectual property of how to do it. So that's where Wichita State comes into this. We know how to do it. We know how to give that technology. We have the research labs to do that, partnering with a private sector company then who will purchase these aircraft and resell these aircraft. We just built our second hangar to hold a 777. And so now we'll be able to do two. The goal ultimately is to do 4 in Wichita, 2 in Salina, and 2 in Topeka. And it's ultimately done. I'm on page 3 here talking about the idea of an MRO. It's the largest growing sector of the aviation industry right now. And if you think about this, think about the B-52. How old is that aircraft? It's still the main bomber in our fleet, and they need to have it flying for another 20 or 40 years. So we're working with DOD and how we keep those airplanes flying. Close here to Topeka, right, the KC-135. The last KC-135 was made in 1962, I believe, might be 64. And those planes have to fly another 20 years. So it's really about what are we doing to these old aircraft and what are we doing with this new digital world? How can we keep them flying in a capacity we never thought about when these aircraft were built? So if we go to page 4, here's just a couple of the current programs that we're working on. The MD-80. And for those of you who have flown, it's the aircraft that has 2 seats on one side and 3 on the other. It's an old McDonnell Douglas aircraft. That's actually being modified right now to put out fires. So we have 2 of those at the hangar right now and doing that. The 737s that we have, they're aerial sprayers. And we'll do that where there's an oil spill in the ocean. And then that mixes with the oil spill and keeps it coming onto shore, so it saves animal life, plant life, and so forth. And then the 777, which I was talking about, which will become a freighter. We're also doing a lot of DoD work, and with the Black Hawk helicopter, the B-1 bomber, F-16 and F-18s. Again, what are we doing? What are the new parts we can put in these aircraft to keep them flying well beyond what they were designed to fly? Future work that we're talking about doing, again, talked about the 777. Military, we're just meeting with them again. We're actually working with the Army, and we're going to start doing this for ground transportation as well. They want us to become an MRO for the Black Hawk helicopter to help them. They need to modify and modernize, I don't know how many a year, and they're already falling behind. So they're looking for us to do this again. All of this to say there is a tremendous need for this, and that the places that invest in the infrastructure will have a backlog of work for a long time. Just to go back to the 777 for a second. If the initial contract's for 200 and we were able to land that here and we can build 18 a year at max capacity, that's 4 in Wichita, that's 2 in Salina and 2 in Topeka, and you're turning those every 6 months, right? That's 10 years of work just on that one program alone. So again, there's so much happening, and it's all growing, and it's becoming, as I've said, the fastest growing area. On page 6, and we're talking about this 777, there's a picture here of a 777, and right next to it, there's a 737. And I just want you guys to understand the size difference between these two aircraft. So the fuselage of a 737 will fit into the engine of a 777. So these are large, large aircraft. And again, some of you have been to our hangars in Wichita and seen them. But if you haven't, we would be glad to host anybody to see that. It's going to be a game changer for freight, the amount of freight that's going to be able to move to satisfy the needs of what the consumer is expecting in the future. Page 7 just really kind of goes through, there's a map up front. We really started doing this testing, flight testing, and environmental research labs. But if you see the orange and the gray, that's the engineering services and the MRO and the modifications we're talking about. That's where the growth is going to happen. And so we see in the next 10 years another 1,000 jobs being added to the 500 we already have. Page 8 is just kind of what we're doing. If you're a nerd and you like to know what's happening on the aircraft, here's what we're doing. Here's one of the cool things. I didn't realize this. It's all about weight. So, and I didn't realize how much, I never thought about a window, how much weight a window is. So what do they have to do to put all this freight in? They have to take all the windows out, and they're replacing it with a very light composite material because you don't need to have windows in a freight. So it's really about all of this technology is about how do we take the weight out of the aircraft so then we can move more product. And I guess I also have to build a really big door to get the product in there. Page 9 just really talks about some of the equipment that's necessary and needed for this. If we go to page 10, this is the Air Flight Lines, Capital Air Flight Lines, which is right next to McConnell Air Force Base and across the street from Spirit. The blue box that says Building 140H, that is the current hangar where the 777 was. Now, just for perspective, when Wichita was the home of Air Force One and did all the modifications for Air Force One, that was where that hangar was kept, so plenty big. Right next to it, the next blue box is where the next hangar just got completed, is done. And then you can see the additional space. And it's not just for us and what we're talking about, but there's other companies that are going to move. So we're in conversations right now with a paint company. Obviously, when you mod these aircraft, you need to have paint companies that are there that can paint. Lots of other suppliers that will come in to do that as well. Page 11 shows you what the new hangar is going to look like, so we can put two of those aircraft nose to nose in it. That's what would be built in Salina. That's the next hangar that would be built in Wichita, and that's what ultimately would go to Topeka. Tim Rogers is here today from the Salina Airport, and we're also working with them to put some hangars there so they can help with that work as well. So if you look, the Works 1 is a 737 hangar. So they can start doing some of the mods that I talked about on the 737s, and then Work 2 would be where the 777 work is. And if you have questions for for the Salina piece. Tim Rogers is here, and he can answer questions as well. But to me, here's one of the exciting pieces, and again, we talk about workforce. We know that we're going to need as many employees as we can to fill this, so we started a program, worked with the local businesses in our community, and they put the money up for this. So for every 6 months, we hire 25 people to work at NIR Works. They get a job, $20 plus an hour, and we pay for them to go to school. Usually to get an A&P mechanics degree, it takes about 2 years. Because they're working, it's going to take 3. So we start them working, we pay for their schooling, and the commitment they do is they work 2 years after they graduate. So it's a 5-year program. We do that every 6 months. So 25, we just did our first, we're getting ready to do our second one. We'll have another 25 in the pipeline. We'll keep doing that. That's how we believe we're gonna fill these jobs. It's gonna require every single A&P mechanic we have currently going to WSU Tech. We're also going to be partnering with K-State Salina for all their AP mechanics and having them work there as well. And that's what we call applied learning. You're getting your degree, you're working in a real life application, and then you become profitable for that company right away. So it's a pretty exciting program. We're glad that the local community stepped in to do that. So really what I'm here today to ask is, in the budget, in the commerce budget, there's $20 million that has been set aside for this project. That allows us to build the next hangar that will house 2 more 777s in Wichita. It's $20 million. The private sector puts in $16 million to match that $20 million. The infrastructure stays the property of the state. This is what's important. The infrastructure needs to be here because as companies come and go, they're going to locate where that infrastructure is. We were able to build and get to this place because Boeing was here. There's lots of places that want this work and have some of the infrastructure, but what they don't have is the engineering talent and the A&P mechanic schools to give them what they need. So it's a big competition for this. And so what we're here to do to say, hey, that $20 million that's in there for Wichita, we need that to be there. But more importantly, we need an additional $15 million to get Salina up today. The commitment we've talked to and talking to people is we could do Topeka today as well, and that would be $51 million. But we probably don't have the aircraft for the next 2 or 3 years, and by the time that comes, we'll have enough revenue coming in through this that we can pay to get Topeka up on board. So really today, what I'm hoping for, A, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have, but B, is as you're working your budget, we would sure appreciate to get Salina on board so we can get some work happening up in that area as well. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Andy. Questions? Senator Steffen, then Senator Ware.
Thank you. And I apologize. I think I faded out for 1 second. I missed some of this. Help me understand how this Works is structured. Who is Works? Where do you get your money? Who signs the paychecks for these employees?
Well, it's a nonprofit 501c3, and it's a partnership between, and I'm going to forget the name of the company, it's in Rose Hill, Kansas, and NIAR, the National Institute for Aviation Research.
Okay. And so, may I continue? Yes. Thank you. So in this money that's received from the Commerce budget, this nonprofit ends up with ownership.
No. The state retains ownership
of these hangars.
Correct.
What else does the state have ownership of?
It would be the hangars and the equipment that's inside the hangars.
Okay. And the employees are working for?
NIR Works, which is that
nonprofit.
C3, yeah.
It's at any step in the line, does the state see profits from this?
Well, I mean, it's a nonprofit 501c3, but the revenue that's generated would go between the private company and Wichita State as that nonprofit. So yeah, we would be investing, that's what we would use to invest in Topeka, that's what we would use to buy further equipment and so forth to keep this working.
So we could loan the entity the money rather than give it to y'all, because y'all are going to generate profits, right?
You guys can do whatever you want, right? But we are a state entity, so when you're giving money to Wichita State, you're giving it to yourself. So you can loan yourself the money or we can build it. And there's a benefit from 1,500 employees paying taxes. These are high-paying jobs, so there are some economic benefits to the investment as well.
Thank you. Okay, we flipped from the 501c3, and I apologize for not catching on this. We flipped from 501c3 nonprofit to Wichita State.
Well, we're one of the partners in the nonprofit, just like,
Okay, so you're Wichita State.
correct.
Okay. Explain the relationship of Wichita State to the nonprofit, please.
So Wichita State, which has many nonprofits, right? So athletics is a nonprofit, student union is a nonprofit, housing is a nonprofit. National Institute for Aviation Research is a nonprofit that does research work for DOD and all these other places. And so this is just another one. It's a partnership, and I wish I could remember the name of the company. I'm sorry about that. That's in Rose Hill. It's a partnership between these two. What Wichita State brings to the table is a tremendous amount of research knowledge and the intellectual property that created how you make this transition happening. That private company takes ownership of those aircraft and is responsible then to giving it back to the client with that modification, or that's how that partnership works. At the end of the day, because of where Commerce coming in and giving us the money and us being a state entity, all property owned by Wichita State is ultimately the property of the state, right? So Coke Arena is paid for by private investors. It's state property.
Can I circle back? Senator, Senator Ware has a question.
Thank you so much. Being a lifelong Wichitan, I can really see the excitement and the possibilities here in this. But it's clearly not going to benefit just Wichita. It'll be a statewide benefit.
Correct. Yeah. The exciting part about this is that in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to make infrastructure investments in Topeka and in Salina, which will both be real jobs and high-paying jobs in both of those communities, right? We're even having conversations. So there's right now only 4 runways that can handle a 777, Eisenhower, McConnell, Salina, and I'm trying to remember the 4th. Oh, Topeka, Forbes Field. So there's other places that are interested, and we may need them, but then you're talking about a pretty massive infrastructure improvement. But yes, this is something that I think will benefit the entire state, for sure.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Senator Stephan.
Thank you. My particular interest is in freestanding privately owned businesses. How does this ever move to a freestanding privately owned for-profit business?
So first of all, what you're trying to do is have a cluster, right? So the infrastructure is here. If you looked at our map, the state's going to build 2 hangars. There's a spot for 6 more hangars. There's going to be private companies that are moving in here and other MROs to do that as well, because once you have that cluster of work, more will come. The other piece is, which really is a benefit, so we have, I believe, 200 or 300 machine shops around the Wichita area that will be providing parts and supplies and everything to this product. So it's not just this one entity, but it's really about how do we help the supply base of the entire community.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that. But again, is this entity going to then ultimately absorb losses to send off and support services that can be privately owned for profit, or how do we not create another giant government agency out of this?
Well, it's not. It's a nonprofit 501c3. You're making an investment into a part of it. So, right, so the $20 million we're asking for from the state for the Wichita hangar, the private sector is putting $16 million into that project as well. So you're not paying for the whole piece. The benefit to the state is ultimately you maintain the infrastructure. So if that company decided to leave, like Boeing left in 2012, the infrastructure is here. Another company can come in and use that infrastructure. If you don't have that infrastructure, this business goes somewhere else.
I don't think I see it quite like you do in that respect.
Sure.
There's still Wichita State staying in this and with no exit strategy that I can see.
Well, I mean, we do research all the time, right? So NIAR started 30 years ago. Where the first partnership we had was with Beechcraft and Cessna when they both wanted to have a wind tunnel. And they knew that they couldn't afford their own wind tunnel. And they said, let's have a share a wind tunnel. And they said, let's put it at Wichita State. Now, I would argue that happened in 1948. Here we are in 2022, that the amount of research and help we give to that aviation industry has grown tremendously, right? Since 2012, where we made this commitment to help companies grow, we've gone from $52 million in research to almost $200 million in research, and we're the #1 university that does private sector research. So we do more private sector research than anybody. So I don't see us ever getting out of that business. We're not selling aircraft, we're not purchasing aircraft. What we are supplying is the research talent and the engineering talent and the people that are going to work there to make this work. And so I just don't see that going away. And, right, everyone takes a risk every day. We can all lose money. I just tell you, our track record is we haven't. We continue to grow.
Okay, we're going to see if there are any other questions. Oh, Senator Holland?
Just a comment, Madam Chair. And I'm familiar with NIAR, what they did, just because many, many years ago, when we still had a different entity called ks, I think it was, I was on the board of that. And so, you know, the state is blessed with a number of what I would call centers of excellence. You know, NIAR is mainframe, aerospace mainframe manufacturing and related technologies, the way I interpret it. I've had, Madam Chair, just through my own personal business dealings, working with a Technology Development Institute out of Manhattan, which is a mechanical engineering centers of excellence. And these are facilities, they work with Fortune 500 companies, they work with entrepreneurial startups, okay? They really are providing an incredible service, okay, particularly to startup and small businesses here in Kansas. There are incredible hurdles to technology acquisition, to intellectual property development, to basically, you know, basically just building a business, particularly when you've got to actually have built a product. So my point is, it is important, obviously, as we look at these programs, and, you know, you may think, you know, people may think it's, you know, it may not be an appropriate role of government to participate in stuff. I would say, au contraire, and I would just say that as a businessman, what I have seen, the potential wealth that those partnerships unleash is potential. They are knocking down barriers that otherwise small businesses could never overcome. So just, you know, I just want to thank NIAR and all our centers of excellence here in the state of Kansas. I think it's important that we scrutinize their budgets, that we have performance metrics to be sure that they are, you know, doing the things they're supposed to do. But you guys just keep at it.
I appreciate that, and you know, as we always do, we submit a report on all these special projects back to you every year to let you know how we're spending the money, what the impact is, and so forth. And that state investment's made a big deal. I mean, the reason that the Army is here and the reason that we are doing all this digital transformation for the Army is because back many years ago, and Senator Holland, you remember this, you made that initial investment in NIAR so that we had the research labs. And here's the problem, right? If you don't have them here, and they go to California or they go to Alabama, they're never coming back. So the question is, what are those areas that are important to our economy, and how do we make sure we keep them here? And small investments can turn around and have huge impact on people's lives. And so I think that that's really what we want to do. This project is going to happen. If it doesn't happen here, Washington wants it, California wants it, Turkey, other countries want it. We want to keep it here because once that infrastructure is here, we will be the MRO capital of the world. You will come here if you want any type of a modification to an aircraft. And that's important because that's where the spin-off companies come from. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Seeing no other questions or comments, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, next committee, we have on our agenda deliberation and recommendations on the Department of Commerce agency budget. So I would seek, oh, I'm sorry, Dylan?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I should have mentioned this earlier. It's up to you if you want to move immediately to working the budget. I believe there were some questions for the agency that were submitted, and they may be available to answer those questions this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, questions, I believe, do we have, Rachel, are you going to field those? Oh, Sherry, oh, I didn't see you. Okay, we'll see who wants to take a question on the budget presentation from yesterday. Any lingering questions or concerns? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know that the agency or department made an attempt to do a performance-based budget. You fell short. And a prime example was today in transportation, we did see one of the budgets that came closer than any of the others. Items that are missing, the fact that there's no sources for the funding listed, that's part of the statute that's required. Your goals, I would question some of those. But Madam Chair, most disconcerting is the fact that they don't have statutory authority for some of the programs that they listed. They just created it at their discretion. That's not how government is supposed to work. Apparently, it's how our government is working, and it's a major problem. So, Madam Chair, I will not be supporting this budget today.
Okay, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for not being here yesterday. I have a couple of questions. Specifically, when I'm looking at the summaries are great. The Kansas Department of Commerce budget proposal testimonial. The work-based learning, the $714,000 for work-based learning, I guess my question is education, are they also contributing to this because it's a partnership with them? Or is the Department of Commerce being asked to pay for all of that? Do you want me to just keep going with my questions?
Let's take those one at a time.
One at a time, okay.
Yes, who would like to address that?
Thank you, Chair. So I reached out to our division director, Mike Beam, on that specific question because I don't know the answer as far as what KSDE is contributing. My assumption would be at the local level, those folks are helping pay for transportation and staffing costs. But I can find the specifics for you, yes.
In my opinion, that'd be important to know because we also fund a lot of education in this state. And then on page 4, so this is maybe a little bit of a note, but I've currently been spending more time with my local community in Topeka and Shawnee County's tourism. And our director came from Missouri, and they had a system there where the money that the tourism department used for marketing, they partnered very much with local communities because the local communities knew best how to promote and market. And I'd like to see us do that. He's spoken multiple times about how they're pretty innovative over there with their marketing funds. So I'd like to see us look into that. And two final questions. On the bottom page of the Salesforce, $99,547 to support Salesforce data integrity analysis position. And it sounds like they would just keep managing the CRM. And that seems odd to me. I mean, I guess at first you need someone to help you revamp the CRM, turn that over, but I guess I'm curious, how long do you anticipate that position being there? And then finally, I would agree, I guess I'm curious, when Senator Tyson brought up the thing about the new initiatives and how they're just created, I would like to know a little bit more about the process for, what liberty and freedom does the department have to create some initiatives, and which ones need legislative, statutory check marks before they can just begin. Thank you.
Rachel, you going to field That's, okay, thank you.
Sorry. So going back to your CRM software question and that position, I think it is a long-term position in an effort to really streamline and make sure that we are doing and making decisions based on that data. So being very data-driven and specific. So this system is used department-wide, and so we want to make sure that it's accurate and that we're keying in things all under the same assumptions and know those definitions so that we can use that data again to make those data-driven decisions as we look for recruitment and expansion. We also have another document that we can provide specifically related to the challenge grant, so that the university piece on one of those new initiatives. So we've put together a fact sheet on that, so we can send that to the committee as well, that details out the thoughts and the purpose behind that and that process. So.
Senator O'Shea?
Thank you. I'm not sure that completely answers my question. So maybe the question would be for Senator Tyson in terms of what's, again, what's the freedom to create initiatives versus what needs to come through us first?
Do you care to respond, Senator Tyson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So agencies and departments should have either statutory by the state or rules and regs in order to create programs and incentives. They don't just make stuff up, but that's one of the reasons that we passed this performance-based budget, was so that we would know whether the program exists because of statutory authority or the department's kind of gone rogue. I would use that terminology. I have a feeling that we only see what the department puts in front of us. So I have a feeling, not picking on any department in the state of Kansas, just in general, I have a feeling this goes on more than legislators are aware. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Dietrich, then Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, and this is in response to what Senator Tyson was saying. I thought we heard yesterday that they did believe that they had regulatory authority to be able to create some of those programs. Is the issue, I'm just trying to clarify the issue, is the issue is that we're not seeing it in the performance-based budgeting piece, or are we questioning their ability to create any new initiatives? I just need clarification.
Does anyone from the department care to address that? Please state your name and.
Bob North, Chief Counsel at the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce, like most agencies, has enabling legislation, and it's got a statute that speaks to its authorities. The Department of Commerce, under KSA 74-5002 and 5005, has got a plethora, 18, 19, 20 powers and authorizations to function as the lead economic development agency in the state. And I don't have that list with me. I'm sure KLRD could get that for you, but the legislature has granted the Department of Commerce a great deal of authority to act on behalf of the state and enhance the economic development and prosperity across the state. So those programs, I mean, if we are entering into a grant agreement with the federal government for a program, that's authorized in statute. It expressly says that we can enter into agreements with the federal government, with other state agencies. So there is a lot of that authority, and to the point that we should report on that and keep you up to date on that, agreed, and we can certainly enhance our efforts in that regard.
Yes, Senator Dietrich.
So I guess my question would be, where is the best place to do that? Would you do it in performance-based budgeting where we have some accountability, or what would it look like to you? I think I'm hearing you'd like to see the data. So I'm just trying to.
Sure, and it could be part of the budget process, or it could be a freestanding report. We report to you on our peak program and on our JCF program, on our HPIP program, on our Star Bond program, on our KICR program. So it could be a combination, but agreed that transparency, to the extent it's going to help this process, we're happy to do that.
Okay, Senator Holland, then Senator Tyson. Okay, we'll take Senator Tyson.
Thank you. In response to that, it is not subjective. It is in statute, and that's why I brought the amendment on the floor last year, that there would be a requirement to follow the performance-based budget. Part of it requires that they list why the program exists, whether it be statute and that they list the funding source. I mean, there's several requirements in statute. It's not subjective. That's part of the reporting that the legislature put in law in 2015-16, and we haven't seen it. I mean, this is a first attempt, and I think we got the departments and agencies' attention last year when the legislature passed a line item requiring performance-based budget, and if you did not do it, you would be cut by 2% your budget. The governor vetoed that line item in the budget. So we have seen an attempt this year, and we're getting closer, but it is not the tool set that the legislature needs in order to be effective at our job. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Holland.
I withdraw the question. I think I have a better understanding what the issue is. Thank you.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe I mentioned these yesterday, and I apologize if I did or didn't, or got answers or didn't get answers, but on page 5 of the budget summary, we can see that salaries and wages went from fiscal year 21 of 19.2 to 22 at 23 million, and then at 23 we're looking at 24.1 million. Can someone from the agency answer why salaries and wages have increased to the tune of right at $5 million over a 2-year span?
Sherry is approaching. Just please state your name and position.
Morning, Sherry Renfro, Chief Fiscal Officer for Department of Commerce. To answer your question, we've had additional staff that we've hired to help with the new programs that we've had, which is why the increase in the salaries and wages.
And I do believe that this might be a good time. I know that there were some questions yesterday about vacant positions, and Dylan has prepared a handout that might help with this question. So, Dylan. And Senator Peck, if you had additional questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that answer. However, we are not into fiscal year 2023 yet, and it looks like there is additional money there. But even between 21 and 22, we're looking at in round numbers, $3.7 million. And that's a significant increase in personnel. And I haven't had time to digest at all the document that was handed to us by our legislative research. I guess if that's the answer that I've got, then the final question as far as the budget analysis that we received, I asked yesterday, and I didn't make a note, so if I got an answer again, I apologize, regarding the debt service, which I am glad to see that the debt will be paid for, the Topeka Workforce Center bonds debt and the impact program bonds debt will be paid in fiscal year 22 this year. But where is the money coming from to pay those bonds? And what are the plans for future use of that money if it will continue coming to the department?
Sure. If I can go back to your first question regarding the salaries and wages. Part of the increase also in '22 is due to the tourism department that was transferred over at the beginning of this fiscal year. So there was a chunk of those salary and wages that did come over to the agency. And then for '23, I believe it includes our enhancement request. So there were several positions there. So that would also increase that salary and wages amount for fiscal year '23. And then going to your question about the debt service, that comes from a transfer from withholding tax. So they make the transfer to us, and then we will make that bond payment. After that payment is made, this final payment, we no longer will receive that transfer. So we don't receive that money even after the payments are made.
Chairman.
Yes, Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I missed where the money's coming from. I realize it's a transfer, but it's coming from where?
Withholding tax payments. It's transferred into the agency, and then we make that bond payment.
Withholding tax would be State General Fund. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trying my best to understand what was just handed out. Under posted, are those all the openings, current openings?
Current openings, correct.
Thank you. And then can I understand better the program specialist?
Under which division?
Division says WFS.
So that would be our Workforce Services Division. So they are program specialists that are hired to work under certain federal grants that we have. And they work specifically for that program.
Are federally funded?
Yes.
Thank you.
The majority of the workforce services programs are federally funded.
Senator Stephan.
Thank you. Can you tell us how much of these salaries and wages transferred over with tourism?
I want to say close to 900,000, almost a million.
Another question, please.
Yes, Senator Stephan.
Thank you. And am I remembering correctly when we had like 40-some unfilled positions last year?
I believe you're correct. We've actually gone through there were a lot of positions that were no longer needed that were just not taken off the system at that time that report was ran, but we have since then gone through our position list to make sure we've cleaned that up.
Senator O'Shea.
Thank you. Okay, again, trying to understand better. Does this, what we were given, does it show somewhere maybe that I'm missing which positions are federally funded versus which are state funded?
Not the document you were given, but it's safe to say that the ones that are workforce are federally funded.
Thank you. And so then if we were to eliminate those, that would just be missing out on the federal money for that position.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to work the budget. Senator Holland.
Move me work the budget.
Okay, we have a motion by Holland and a second by O'Shea to work the budget. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay, motion carries. Senator Peck, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the vote was just to work the budget, and now we're working the budget?
Now, we're going to work it.
Okay, that was a little,
Yes, we're not, we did not, for clarification, we did not pass it. It's just to work it. So now, are there amendments for the budget? Any amendments? Senator Peck.
thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, that was different for me. I thought that the power of the chair said, we're going to work the budget, and anyway, be that as it may.
Rule 14.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been told that more than once. I would direct the committee's attention to page 5, the graph there. You will see a significant increase in state general fund expenditures from 21 to 23. You will notice the graph is fairly flat, fairly close to zero, and then all of a sudden it jumps up. And as I indicated yesterday, I understand that we have a little bit of additional money in the state general fund right now. That does not mean that we're supposed to go out and spend it. A lot of these expenditures that we're looking at, particularly in this agency, I'm confident in my own mind, if we authorize these expenditures now, they will be ongoing indefinitely. So as far as making any type of a motion, getting the process started, I would then note on page 6 that at the top of the box there are 309.3 FTEs, which I believe would include the document we were handed out by Mr. Deere. Would that be correct? Okay, that's what I presumed. And then you'll notice at the bottom of the box, there is a total of 323 FTEs that they're asking us to authorize or to approve. And so I would like to see us maintain the FTEs at the 309 because it looks like to me they've got plenty of vacant positions, and as was asked by Senator O'Shea, the WFS would be federal funds, as I understand that, if I got the information correct. So I don't see why there's a need for 323 FTEs. And then just to lay everything out, and then you can tell me, Madam Chair, how you would like to see us handle this. When we look at pages 10, 11, 12, 13, and I will focus on page 13, there are significant, what we call up here, enhancements. Kansas taxpayers, when we use the word enhancements, they're trying to figure out, what are you talking about? We're talking about more money from Kansas taxpayers, is what we're talking about. So the agency is asking for a significant amount of, and the governor then, on top of that, is adding a significant amount of money. So in looking at this, I like the idea of the Office of Broadband Development. I would like to develop broadband, but I don't think that it's worth $1 million when you look at number 4 on page 13, when you look at the salaries. We heard salaries this morning in the Department of Agriculture. They're looking for engineers for important things that would benefit our state environment, but their salaries are below market and significant below these. If I remember right, it seems like a starting salary was around $58,000, and then it would go up to as much as $72,000 once they've got experience. So my point in bringing that up, Madam Chairman, is the fact that I think these salaries are out of line. So what I will propose, and if you want me to make it in a motion, I can make 2 motions or 1 motion or a dozen motions, but to leave the FTEs at the 309.3 level, and then to say that this committee does not agree with the governor's enhancement recommendations, which totals, and I realize a lot of this money is not SGF, but it is money that was taken from Kansans and others to the tune of about $265 million for fiscal year 23 is what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at doing anything on fiscal year 22 different than what the governor has recommended. And so I just wanted to mention that. And again, when you're ready for a motion, I'm ready to make the motion, and you can tell me if you want 1 or 2 or multiple.
Yes, what I think I want to do, and I'm going to look to Dylan, is I think let's get all of our recommendations, let's get them down and clarified, because we're having a lot, and we'll take them then once we have clarification. And Dylan, if you can just keep a list of feedback, and then we will take all the recommendations as committee members have time to think and process on that. If that works for the committee, I think we'll just gather all the recommendations and then take them one at a time. So with that, Senator Holland.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I like your, I guess what I was going to propose is that, so we understand the amendments that are being offered, why don't we just have the folks that want to bring amendments to basically get them in some sort of acceptable documented format. But, an informal balloon, whatever you want to call it, not that it's got to be translated to statute necessarily, but just something that communicates to the committee what each of the things are specifically, so we have something to look at and ask questions about. Then if we take that offline and come back at a future date tomorrow, whenever your thoughts, Madam Chair, then we can have everything before us in paper and understand what the proposed amendments are.
I think that's wise, rather than us try to, off the cuff, try to digest the implication of what's being discussed. We can gather those, have Dylan put those in a formal way so that we know what we're looking at as we make those recommendations. And if we need to push this to tomorrow or another date, I would rather do that and make sure that we're all comfortable with the recommendations rather than rush the process. We do not need to rush for once. So I think that's wise. So we'll just gather recommendations at this point, if that suits the committee's needs. Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you remind me, we make recommendations and then it goes to Ways and Means and they have the ultimate say, or can you remind me the process?
Yes, great question. Yes, so what we're going to do is we will report out our recommendations to the Committee on Ways and Means. That's exactly the process. Mm-hmm. Senator Holland.
And for my ignorance, Madam Chair, I've never really been involved in budgetary processes directly, just only in this type of a role. When the committee basically passes out a budget, is it basically, is it in statute form actually or not, or is it more like some sort of a?
I will let Dylan, he's anxious to address that, so Dylan.
Anxious, yes. So it's actually a subcommittee report, which is different from what you've seen anywhere else, which is going to detail what the agency's recommendation is, what the governor's recommendation is, and then it will show everything this committee recommends as adjustments, okay, to that. And then we'll list in language, which we'll write up, and then provide to the committee to review and make sure it reflects your intent. And then that report will be read in the full committee.
But Madam Chair, additional question for Dylan.
Yes.
But Dylan, we're not actually passing statutory language out of here. It's just a report.
So it becomes a rather convoluted process, as the budget normally is. So what will happen is that you will not have statutory language, for the most part, coming out of this committee. But we will work with the revisor's office over the next 2 or 3 weeks to convert it into statutory language.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dylan.
Okay, other recommendations, discussion? Yes, Senator Dietrich.
I'm just trying to make sure I understood what Senator Peck was, and I guess asking us to do. Was it all of the enhancements, including what we just heard from Wichita State University, which is enhancement number 17, the $20 million that you're, when you said, did you say you wanted to eliminate all of the enhancements on pages 14 and 15, or 13, 14, and 15 in your amendment? I think that's what I heard. Was that correct? Madam Chair?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hadn't looked at every detail, but my thought was the enhancements for fiscal year 2023, some of them I don't have too much of a problem with, except the dollar amount being higher than I'm comfortable with. The agency grant writer, that might be a great thing, but for $93,000. But I guess to answer Senator Dietrich's question, Madam Chair, would be the fact that I was proposing that we tell Ways and Means, and then it will basically hopefully encourage Ways and Means to take a closer look, because whatever we recommend to Ways and Means, they can accept it and follow those guidelines, or they can totally say, thanks for your work, but we're not going to accept any of it. I mean, it's a little frustrating because we can work a lot of time and expend a lot of energy and then Ways and Means not do anything. I don't think that'll happen. I think they'll listen to our recommendation. But again, my proposal was to save or to not allow the supplemental or the enhancements in the far right column to the tune of 264 point, actually right at $265 million. And then but this is for apparently discussion, and if, Madam Chair, apparently additional committee members say, well, I agree with 90% of those, or 9 out of 10, or whatever, then it can be determined if we're going to remove all of them, which is my proposal, or if we're going to just remove some of them.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Dietrich.
So in some committees I've been on in the past, when we're looking at enhancements, because we may have some feelings about one or the other, we take each one independently. And I would like to consider doing that because there are some that we may feel are justified and make sense that we will recommend to Ways and Means, and there may be others where we unanimously think that is not an appropriate expenditure, and then Ways and Means can make a decision and overrule us. It just makes a little bit more sense to me because there are a couple that I think are probably very important, maybe more than a couple, I don't know.
Okay. Senator Ware.
Thank you. And one thing that I keep hearing is that in general, the state of Kansas is paying very little compared to the open market, if you will, for employees, and they're having a terrible time trying to keep people. And so I think that increasing those income levels for folks will entice them to take the job and to stay, both, which it has been such a problem. And I think that explains a lot of these higher amounts.
Senator Peck. Okay, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was under the understanding that those were all new positions and it wasn't salary increases, but does it also include salary increases? And I know it also includes benefits, and so there might be health insurance increases, but.
Sherry, Rachel?
Thank you. So if I can understand your question correctly, is the enhancement request, the salaries include increases, or they are new positions that include the salary and fringe amounts? So it's not just a salary amount, it also includes the fringe that goes with it.
So it's no pay increases for current employees?
Correct.
Thank you.
Senator Ware.
Just to continue that thought just for a second more, I think it really doesn't matter whether it's a new employee or an existing employee. The same function is still there, that we need to pay people more if we want to get the good ones and, more importantly, maybe to keep them.
Other discussion? I do have one recommendation that I would like to make, and that is to add language to increase the amount from the Commerce budget reserve for NIAR from the 20 million to the 35 million for fiscal year 2023. So we'll want that added to the list. Please dial in. So if there's no more discussion, listening to the process, what I believe we will do, committee, because I do think this is important work and we need to take our recommendation to Ways and Means very seriously, is I would ask you to look over the enhancements, consider the discussion we've had today, and if you have recommendations you would like to work up and get to dial-in so those can be in a form that we can understand and comprehend quickly, then on next Tuesday, so that gives you some time to process, next Tuesday, that is when we will go through those enhancements one by one and then take into consideration the recommendations that have been discussed today. Does that process work for the committee? Okay, Senator Stephan.
Thank you. I'm not going to answer that question directly. I'm going to back up a little bit. Can you explain your proposal again a little bit? I didn't catch it.
Yes, what I am proposing is to increase the budget for the NIAR Works from 20 million to 35 so that they can do that work, get the work started in Salina. Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's NIAR Works?
That's the presentation we just had with the
thank you. Sorry, the
hangers. and
words.
Yeah, yes, yes. Any other questions? Senator Peck?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate your recommendation. Can you point me and maybe the rest of the committee, is that someplace that we can find in the budget write-up where, because you said increase it from 20 to 35?
Yes, thank you for that question, Senator Peck. It is in the enhancements. It's number 17, and it reads that the current enhancement is to add 195 million SGF for grant funding with local match. 20 million of that is earmarked for NIAR. I would want to increase that to 35 million of that 195.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, any questions about the process and as a teacher, the homework that you have been assigned? Dylan.
Madam Chair, I just want to point something out, and there's always an opportunity for adjustments. But this budget is scheduled to report out on next Wednesday. Okay, so by the later, if we don't kick it out next Tuesday, then we will have to work with the Ways and Means Committee to adjust the report out schedule in that committee as well.
Oh, trust me, we are kicking it out Tuesday. That's why I want to be organized and be able to get this up and out on Tuesday. Okay. And committee, just a couple of reminders. The 21st is the last day to work bills. So keep that in mind as we look to get our work done here in the Commerce Committee. And seeing no other questions or comments, we are adjourned.